I'm Joyce Elliott, and at this time we will have a brief overview of the 11th chapter of the book of Zechariah. While the previous chapter offered blessings to the faithful children of God, this chapter warns of curses to the unfaithful. Chapter 11 is a picture of shepherds. God's flock has been scattered and slaughtered because Israel chased behind false shepherds. This is also a picture of Israel's rejection of the Good Shepherd. Chapter 11 also gives us the prophecy concerning the judgment of the Jews for rejecting Jesus as the Messiah and of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. When we look at verses 2 and 3, it speaks of the judgment of the rulers of the people. Verse 3 speaks of the judgment of the religious leaders too. This following verse speaks of the good shepherd and of the wicked shepherd. Look at verse 4. Thus says the Lord my God, feed the flock of the slaughter. And verse 5, whose possessors slay them and hold them not guilty, and they shall sell them and say, blessed be the Lord, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. The possessors in verse 5 refers to those that sell them, and it also refers to the wicked rulers. If you look at verse 6, the wicked rulers tell Israel that they will not have pity on the inhabitants of the land, nor will they deliver the men, every one of them, to his neighbor's hand, and they shall smite the land, and out of their hands they will not deliver them. If you look at verse 7 through 10, it talks about the feeding of the flock, and that the flock are the Jewish people. The names of the two staffs are beauty, which means favor and pleasantness, and bands, which means a union of the covenant that the Lord had with Israel. And it refers to the blessings of God upon the Jews. When we get down to verse 9, it says, Then said I will not feed you, that thou diest, let it die, and that is to be cut off, let it be cut off, and let the rest eat every one the flesh of another. That means these are bad times that Israel are facing. But God first proclaimed judgment on the wicked shepherds, on the sheep which willfully turn from God to follow the wicked shepherd. God's judgment comes in the forms of withholding blessings and protection. When we get to verse 12, it says, And I said unto them, If you think good, give me my price, and if not, forbear. So they waited for my price, 30 pieces of silver. And what this verse references is the prophecies that depicts the price that Judas set for the betrayal of Jesus that is found in the New Testament. Verse 13, And the Lord said unto me, Cast it unto the potter, a goodly price, that I was pleased at of them. And I took the 30 pieces of silver and cast them to the potter in the house of the Lord. Now remember, in the New Testament, Judas threw his 30 pieces of silver into the temple, and the chief priests used it to purchase the potter's field to bury strangers. In verses 15 through 17, God directs his attention toward the bad shepherds which the people chose. The phrase foolish shepherds depicts leaders who despise wisdom. Verse 16, For lo, I will raise up a shepherd in the land, which shall not visit those that be cut off, neither shall seek the young one, nor heal that is broken, nor feed that standeth still. But he shall eat the flesh of the fat, and tear their claws in pieces. But in verse 17, there's always a consequence for disobedience. Woe to the idle shepherd that leaveth the flock. That means those false shepherds that Israel was falling down behind. The sword shall be upon his arm, and upon his right eye. His arm shall be clean dried up, and his right eye shall be utterly darkened. The sword on his arm and right eye signifies strength and power. These pronouncements on Israel occurred because they listened to false prophets and refused to heed the voice of the Good Shepherd. By nature, humans are foolish and selfish, and there is always a price for disobedience. The good news is that, yet even in our disobedience, we serve a faithful and forgiving God who is always waiting for our hearts to turn to Him. Thank you for sharing today.